The Wyoming sky did not warn you before it tried to kill you. It turned without mercy. One moment it was wide and blue and endless, and the next it was a wall of bruised purple rolling across the prairie like Judgment Day. Nora Bennett saw that sky from the window of a rattling stagecoach, and in that moment, she understood something deep in her bones. The West did not care who you had been. It only cared whether you could survive. She had been traveling for 3 weeks, moving farther and farther from the smoke-stained buildings of New York. The fire still lived inside her memory. The heat. The hallway filled with black smoke. Her sister Clara's voice calling her name. Nora pressed her gloved hands together in her lap, as if she could squeeze the memory out of her blood. She was not that girl anymore. She was Nora Bennett, music teacher. That was the story she would tell. The stagecoach lurched violently as thunder cracked overhead. Rain did not fall gently. It attacked. Sheets of water slammed against the wood. The road dissolved into mud. The horses screamed. Nora grabbed the leather strap by the window as the coach tilted sideways. Then the world flipped. The door burst open. Cold air hit her face like a slap. She tumbled into mud and sliding water. The shock stole her breath. She clawed at the bank, but it gave way beneath her boots. Water rushed around her waist, dragging her down. For one terrifying second, she was not in Wyoming. She was back in that burning hallway, choking, unable to breathe. She broke the surface, gasping. Then she saw him. A rider stood above the gully, dark against the lightning. His horse plunged down the slope without hesitation. He did not shout. He did not ask questions. He came straight for her through the rushing water. When he reached her, his hands closed around her arms, strong and unyielding. He pulled her upright as if she weighed nothing. Nora stared at him, soaked and shaking. Water streamed down her face. Her expensive blue dress clung to her like a second skin. "You're getting me all wet," she blurted. For a split second, even in the storm, he looked almost amused. His voice was low and steady. "Ma'am, you're already drowned." He lifted her onto the saddle and climbed up behind her. His chest was solid and warm against her back. His arms formed a wall around her as the horse fought its way up the embankment. She had not felt safe in years. Not truly safe. But pressed against that stranger in the middle of a violent storm, she felt something close to it. His name was Eli McCrae. He took her to his ranch 5 miles outside Willow Creek. The house was rough timber, the barn leaning slightly, the yard thick with mud. Inside, heat from a cast-iron stove wrapped around her like a blanket. The air smelled of wood smoke and coffee. 2 others lived there. Gus, an older ranch hand with sharp eyes, and Tommy, a wide-eyed boy of 14. Eli handed her dry clothes and turned his back so she could change behind a screen. He did not stare. He did not hover. He simply said, "Get warm." That was the first surprise. The second came the next morning when she stepped into the main room wearing his oversized flannel shirt. The sun poured through bare windows. Eli stood at the stove frying bacon. He looked at her directly, not in the way men had looked at her in saloons, not with hunger or ownership, just with quiet assessment. "Eat," he said, sliding a plate toward her. She obeyed. She was hungrier than she wanted to admit. The storm trapped her there for days. The roads washed out. The creek swelled. Willow Creek was unreachable. Nora insisted on helping around the ranch. She hauled water until her shoulders burned. She chopped kindling until her palms split. She milked a stubborn cow that kicked the bucket twice before she managed half a pail. Eli watched without comment. On the third day, he noticed her bleeding hands while she hung laundry in the wind. He took them gently, turning them over in his rough palms. "You've got city hands," he said. "I'm not soft," she replied. His gray eyes studied her. "No," he agreed quietly. "You're not." Something shifted then. Not romance, not yet. Something steadier. Respect. The real turning point came in the corral. A young mare panicked and nearly trampled Tommy. Eli reached for his rope, ready to force her down. Nora climbed through the fence before he could stop her. She moved slowly, humming under her breath. A soft melody. The horse trembled, but did not strike. Nora laid a hand on her neck and kept singing until the wildness drained away. Silence settled over the yard. "Where'd you learn that?" Eli asked. "Fear is the same in every creature," she answered. That night, he asked her to play the old guitar hanging on the wall. She sang by the stove, her voice low and rich, filling the small room with something clean and aching. Eli watched her differently after that, not like a man claiming something, like a man seeing something rare. Later, when she nearly slipped on a wet plank by the window, he caught her before she hit the floor. His arm wrapped around her waist, their faces inches apart. The heat between them was sudden and startling. Nora felt it travel through her like lightning. "Careful," he said, stepping back too quickly. But neither of them forgot. When the roads finally cleared and Eli drove her to Willow Creek, Nora thought the hardest part was over. She was wrong. Mrs. Dawes, the school board head, stood stiff on the porch, her eyes sharp and cold. "You are late," she said. "The storm," Nora explained. Mrs. Dawes' gaze flicked to Eli, standing behind her like a silent shield. Suspicion hardened her features. "Willow Creek values propriety," she said pointedly. Nora felt the old shame crawl up her spine. The whispers would come. They always did. Eli stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She can handle a wild horse. I reckon she can handle your children." Mrs. Dawes did not smile. Nora watched Eli ride away down the muddy street, the wagon wheels cutting deep tracks. For the first time since Clara died, she felt torn between two worlds. The town with its rules and judging eyes, and the ranch with its wind, its danger, and the man who had pulled her from drowning water without asking who she used to be. The West had not welcomed her, but maybe, just maybe, it had given her something else. And she did not yet understand how much that storm had changed both of their lives. Willow Creek did not forgive easily. It did not forget either. The whispers began the second week. Nora felt them before she heard them. Women paused mid-sentence when she stepped onto the boardwalk. Men at the livery stable looked too long, then looked away with crooked smiles. Children stared at her as if she carried a secret stitched into her dress. The secret did not stay buried for long. One afternoon, Mrs. Gable at the dry goods store slid a crumpled yellow paper across the counter. The ink was faded, but the picture was clear. A woodcut drawing of a woman in a low-cut gown standing beside a piano. Head tilted back, mouth open in song. The headline read, "The Nightingale of the West. Live at the Gilded Cage." Nora's throat went dry. "Is this you?" Mrs. Gable asked quietly. "It was a job," Nora answered, her voice thin. "I was hungry." Mrs. Gable's mouth tightened. "We are decent people here, Miss Bennett." Nora walked out of the store without the thread she had come for. The town's judgment followed her down the street like a shadow. By Friday, the gossip reached the saloon, and by nightfall, it reached Eli. He stood at the bar when he heard it. "She sang for miners in Deadwood," one man slurred. "Bet she did more than sing." Laughter. "I'd pay to find out." The glass shattered in Eli's hand before he realized he was squeezing it. Whiskey and blood ran over the bar. The room fell silent. He did not turn around. He did not start a fight. He simply dropped a coin and walked out. Because if he fought, they would say he was proving them right. When he drove the wagon to fetch Nora that weekend, she was waiting outside the boarding house, pale and quiet. The ride back to the ranch was colder than the air. Words hung between them, but neither spoke. In the barn that night, the dam broke. "They know," Nora whispered, her voice cracking. "They all know." She stood in the stall with the young mare, her forehead pressed to the animal's neck. Her shoulders shook. Eli stepped inside. The lantern light threw long shadows across the wooden walls. "Tell me the truth," he said softly. "Not what they say. What happened?" Nora looked at him, tears streaking her cheeks. "My sister died in a fire," she said. "I had nothing. No money. No family. The saloon paid in cash. I sang. Men bought drinks. Some tried to touch me." Her voice trembled but did not break. "But I never sold myself. I saved every coin to come here." Eli listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took a slow breath. "My turn," he said. He told her about the Red River Gang, about the raid, about the rancher's son who had come out with a shotgun and never went back inside, about the bullet that grazed his jaw, about riding away and leaving that life behind. "The town is right about one thing," he said quietly. "I was an outlaw." Nora reached up and touched the scar on his face. "You are not that man now," she whispered. The space between them disappeared. The kiss was not careful. It was not polite. It was years of loneliness colliding in a single breath. His hands found her waist. Her fingers clutched his shoulders. For one suspended moment, the world fell away. Then memory struck her like lightning. Hands in the dark, laughter in smoke-filled rooms, the feeling of being wanted for the wrong reasons. She pulled back sharply. "I can't," she whispered. Eli stepped away immediately. "I won't take anything you don't freely give," he said, voice rough but steady. The restraint hurt more than rejection. The next weeks were strained, polite, controlled. But the world did not care about their tension. Silas Kincaid arrived in town wearing a silk vest and a smile too sharp to trust. He claimed to represent the railroad. He bought drinks. He bought favors. He also bought the banknote on Eli's ranch. And he remembered Nora. "You look different in calico," Kincaid murmured when he cornered her outside the schoolhouse. "But I never forget a face." Fear crept back into Nora's bones. 2 nights later, Kincaid grabbed her in an alley. "You convince McCrae to sell," he hissed, "or I tell this town everything." She refused. He twisted her arm until she cried out. That was when Eli's voice split the darkness. He did not speak calmly. He did not reason. He hit Kincaid with a force that sent him into the dirt. The fight was quick and brutal. Eli's rage was not wild. It was controlled and terrifying. "Touch her again," he said, standing over him, "and I'll bury you." Kincaid spat blood and promised ruin. The ruin came faster than they expected. Men rode out to the ranch and beat Gus. They threatened Tommy. They cut fences. They made it clear that accidents could happen. Then they set a trap in Devil's Cut. A rope dropped over Nora's shoulders and dragged her from her horse. 3 men pinned her down in the frozen dirt. "Just a little fun," the leader sneered. The gunshot came like thunder. Eli rode down the ravine the same way he had ridden into the storm weeks before, without hesitation. The fight was savage. Dirt, blood, broken bone. Eli took a knife slash, but kept moving. Nora grabbed a rock and struck one attacker from behind. When it ended, the men fled. Eli fell to his knees beside her. "I have you," he said, over and over. Back at the ranch, as she cleaned the cut on his arm, something inside Nora shifted. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she whispered. This time, when he kissed her, she did not pull away. It was not about hunger. It was about choosing. And when she gave herself to him, it was not shame that followed. It was peace. Morning brought new danger. Kincaid accused Eli of assault and attempted murder. A warrant was issued. The sheriff came with handcuffs. Eli did not run. "If I run, they win," he told Nora. She watched them ride away across the snow, and for the first time in her life, Nora Bennett did not think about fleeing. She thought about fighting. The ranch felt empty without Eli. The wind still howled across the Wyoming plains, the cattle still needed hay, and the stove still burned every night. But the house had lost its heartbeat. Nora lay awake in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of wood as if it were danger coming for her. Eli was sitting in a cold jail cell in Willow Creek, and Silas Kincaid was smiling somewhere in town. On the 3rd morning after Eli's arrest, Nora stopped shaking. Silence would not save them. She dressed carefully in her blue dress. She pinned her hair tight. She rode into town with her back straight and her chin high. People stared. Let them stare. She did not go to the jail first. She went to the parsonage. Pastor Whitfield opened the door with a frown. "Miss Bennett." "I am not here for forgiveness," Nora said calmly. "I am here for truth." She stepped inside before he could refuse her. She told them everything. About the fire. About Clara. About starving. About singing in the saloon because there was no other work. About fighting off hands that thought money meant ownership. Then she told them about the ravine. "They tried to rape me," she said plainly. "Mr. McCrae saved my life." The pastor's wife lowered her eyes. Nora did not cry. She left the parsonage and walked down the main street of Willow Creek, telling her story again. And again. And again. She told the blacksmith. She told the banker. She told the wives who had whispered behind lace gloves. By sunset, the town was unsettled. Kincaid had counted on her shame to keep her quiet. He had misjudged her. The courthouse filled the day of the hearing. Every bench was packed. The air was thick with heat and sweat and tension. Eli was brought in wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in. His hands were cuffed in front of him. He looked tired, but he did not look broken. Nora sat in the front row. Kincaid's lawyer spoke first. He painted Eli as a violent outlaw with a criminal past. He produced the foreclosure papers. He called Nora a fallen woman who had lured men into a trap. Then Nora took the stand. She swore to tell the truth. She described the rope, the cold ground, the smell of whiskey, the laughter. "Mr. McCrae saved me," she said. "He did not attack them. He stopped them." The lawyer smirked. "And is it not true, Miss Bennett, that you once worked in a saloon?" "Yes," she answered, without hesitation. A murmur rippled through the room. "And you are currently living with the defendant?" "Yes." Gasps. Nora lifted her chin. I sang because I was hungry, she said clearly. I lived at the ranch because the town would not house me. None of that gives any man the right to put his hands on me. Silence fell. Then Eli stood up. I rode with the Red River Gang 10 years ago, he said. I was young and angry and wrong. Kincaid smiled, thinking he had won. But I left, Eli continued, the night Silas Kincaid ordered the shooting of a rancher's son. The smile vanished. The courtroom erupted. Kincaid shouted lies. The judge banged his gavel. The sheriff demanded order. Then one of Kincaid's hired men stood up from the back. No, sir, the man said, shakily. McCrae didn't jump us. We were sent to scare the woman. The truth cracked the room wide open. Kincaid tried to run. He bolted out the side door with a satchel of forged deeds. Eli leaped over the railing and chased him into the street. A gunshot split the air. Gus fell to the dirt with a bullet in his shoulder. The town exploded into chaos. Papers flew everywhere as the satchel burst open. Ranch deeds, forged signatures, fraud. Sheriff Haynes fired his rifle. Kincaid dropped. It ended in dust and silence. Eli rushed to Gus. Nora pressed her shawl against the wound. Blood stained her dress again, but she did not flinch. Kincaid was arrested in chains. The foreclosure was voided. Eli was fined for his past crimes, but spared prison. Justice in the West was never clean. It was rough and heavy and scarred. But it was enough. Spring came slowly to the plains. The ranch was damaged, fences broken, supplies low. Gus walked with a limp now. Money was tight. The town still watched Nora with careful eyes. But something had changed. One afternoon, Mrs. Whitfield arrived with a basket of bread and preserves. We are not friends, she said stiffly, but you are a neighbor. It was not full forgiveness. It was a beginning. Nora cleared out a storage shed beside the barn. She scrubbed the floors. Eli built benches. She painted a chalkboard black. She hung a small wooden sign outside. Willow Creek Day School. At first, only 2 boys came, then 4, then 6. She taught them letters and hymns and songs that did not belong to smoke-filled rooms. Eli would stand outside sometimes, listening to children sing inside that little shed, his chest tight with something like pride. One evening in June, the sky darkened again. Thunder rolled across the plains. Rain came down hard and warm, washing dust from the air. Nora was outside gathering laundry when the storm hit. The water soaked her instantly. Her dress clung to her. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. Eli ran toward her from the barn. "Nora, get inside," he shouted. But she stood there laughing. "Free." He stopped, staring at her. Water streamed down his face as he stepped closer. She grinned at him, eyes bright. "Mr. McCrae," she called over the thunder, "you're getting me all wet again." For a moment, he remembered the storm in the gully, the mud, the fear. But this was different. This was joy. He laughed, wrapped his arms around her, and lifted her off the ground. She clung to him as rain poured over both of them. They stood in the doorway afterward, watching the fields drink the water. The barn roof leaked in one corner. The fence would need mending again. There would always be storms. But Nora rested her head against Eli's chest and felt his heart beating steady and strong. "We'll fix the leak," she said softly. "Together," he answered. The camera of the mind pulls back. A small ranch house stands against the vast Wyoming prairie. Rain falls. Thunder rolls in the distance. Inside that fragile shelter are 2 people who survived fire, flood, shame, and greed. A woman who refused to be defined by her past. A man who refused to run from his. The storm does not end. It becomes part of the land. And in the doorway of that weathered house, wrapped in each other's arms, they stand unbroken. Still here. Still together. Still fighting. And for the first time in both their lives, finally home.